back to Typecast Heroes, where we believe typology can save the world. I'm Jessie Miller.
And I'm Amanda Fogelson. Today we're going to continue answering the question, you just took the MBTI test, now what? We're continuing our mini-series where we explain what each of the 4 letters mean that you just got on the test, and why they matter, and what to do next.
In our last video, we briefly covered I versus E, and we also mentioned in an earlier video the history of the Myers-Briggs test and how Isabel Briggs-Myers made the test because she believed that it could show which of the cognitive functions that you used according to Carl Jung psychology. So, as we said in that video, the tests are a good place to start, but then it's important that you do your own research to decide your true type, or you can schedule an interview with us. We can talk you through the test, look at your results, and then schedule an interview with us and be a participant in our project. And if you don't know what that means, please check out our video, Welcome to Typecast Heroes, and get all of the information about our project. So after you take the test, you get 4 letters. These 4 letters are a code to which of the cognitive functions that you use. So again, last video we covered I versus E. In this video, we're going to cover
S versus N, sensing versus intuition.
And we've got a lot to say today.
This is by far the one that has the most information because of 2 reasons, really. There's so many stereotypes and myths and all the things that are out there about these 2 letters. Mm-hmm. And it is confusing. It's hard to explain, and it's also a little bit hard to understand accurately. Like, to get the accuracy across is a little difficult. So we're going to try to simplify it as much as we can.
Right. So in modern, or in, let's just say in like the colloquial common knowledge, most people believe that sensing is taking in things through just the 5 senses, and that intuition is like those gut instincts, right? Mm-hmm. So that is what, when you take the test, if you've got no background of Carl Jung psychology, or you don't know anything about what psychological type stated, that's probably what you think, right? Yep. Like that's what people tell you when they talk to you about 100%. This test.
Yeah, intuition, literally 100 times out of 100, someone will say, oh, but I've got feelings about this. And that's great. Everyone kind of does. And there's different reasons for that, which we'll go into later. Mm-hmm. But that's not how we're using the terminology or term intuition.
Right. In this
typology.
So it's also important to understand that Carl Jung had very maddening definitions of these things himself. They were very abstract, and I spend almost all day in various places all over Reddit and Facebook and now Discord discussing what these definitions mean. So there are lots of battles, and if you've got your own opinion and you disagree with the way that I present this, come find me. We can have a conversation about this, but I'm going to present it as concisely as possible and as my understanding has developed about these terms. And it's also important to note that Carl Jung started this section by saying that intuition is difficult to understand. It just is. Mm-hmm. So why do we need to discuss it at all? It's important because, again, this is language for what's going on in your brain. There's a lot of things in our brain that's difficult to understand. Emotions in general are difficult to understand. Logical thought is difficult to understand. So giving it a name is important so that you can own it and you can talk about it with the people who love you. You can talk about it in the big scale of infrastructure, right? Mm-hmm. So that is why we have to define it. We have to give it some boundaries, even if we can't give it perfectly finite boundaries. And I know all the TI users out there are very frustrated by that, but it is what it is. I'm sorry. So to give me a little bit of help, I have a box. So Carl Jung... It's a box.
It is, and it's super helpful. You'll see why.
Okay, so Carl Jung believed that, again, there were 2 types of forces in our brain, so how we perceive information and how we make decisions. So we're going to be talking about perceiving information, how we take in things. So sensing and intuition are the lens through which we see the world. So 4 types of these 4 types of perceiving information. So an extroverted sensor. So extroverted sensing is when you look at all of the concrete details of everything in front of you. So if you stick a box in front of an extroverted sensor, they're going to look at this box and they're going to interact with it in the real time. You tell them to learn everything about the box. So they're going to tell you all of the information. They will measure this box. They will know everything they can about the box, right? That's extroverted sensing.
In the sense where it's brown, it's small, it's
this many inches long, mm-hmm. right? So then we have an introverted sensor. Introverted sensing is when you pull on all of the past experiences that you've had and you use it to project onward onto an object. So that could be things that you've learned in school, things that you've gone through in life, things that you've seen on television, and obviously an extroverted sensor has that too. However, because an extroverted sensor is more oriented to the real time, an extroverted sensor is more likely to look at the box and see it as it is and have less of their own projections onto the object. So an introverted sensor is more likely to look at this box and think, I moved last summer. I know that I used boxes like this to pack things in. I'm going to make the assumption then that this is a moving box. Mm-hmm. So when they look at this box, yes, they are still taking in details like the extroverted sensor did, but they're also pulling from their past to project onward onto this box. That is introverted sensing. A person who uses extroverted intuitive, if that's the lens they see the world through, they're likely to look at this box, and yes, they will pull on their past experiences, and yes, they will look at the details, right? But they have a tendency to see objects not as they are, but as they could be, and make connections with other things. So if you take a person who uses extroverted intuition, remember, extroverted intuition is making connections and looking at, it's outside of the box. Oh my God. It's outside of the box thinking, and it is looking at things not as they are, but as they could be, right? Mm-hmm. So if you stick an extroverted intuitive in a room with this box, and you tell them to learn everything they could about this box, or to perceive this box, or how do they see this box, mm-hmm. they are likely to see it not as it is, but how it could be. So Amanda, who is an extroverted intuitive,
you could start thinking that honestly the very first thing that always comes to mind here is crafts, like what I would do with the box, and just what it could become. And this sounds like such a simple example of what we're talking about, but that's how simple it could be. That's what we're trying to do. And so literally you could look at the box and just think of all the different possibilities you can use the box, or all the different possibilities the box has possibly been used, but I'm not talking about my own experience. I wouldn't look at this box and be like, oh yeah, I saw one of those the other day. Like, that's not really what comes to mind. Mm-hmm. And also I will probably, I have a tendency, as I think any users do, to not actually see all the details about the box. Like, it could be sitting mm-hmm. on my table for 2 weeks and I don't notice that there's like this barcode on it or something, like something stupid like that. But it's something that just, you would think I would notice, but I just really don't.
Right. And so now we're going to be talking about introverted intuition, which is how I lead and go throughout the world. So if extroverted intuition is outside the box, introverted intuition is thinking about the box. So I don't mean literally about this box. If you asked me about this object and you asked me to learn everything about the box, my first question would be why? Why am I doing this test? Because introverted intuitives tend to ask why all of the time. They want the bigger meaning to things. They want the big abstract concepts. And honestly, if I looked at this box, I would connect it to whatever theoretical nonsense is going on in my head. So for the past 2 years or however long I've been doing this, I don't know, because I'm very bad at time, because time is a construct and it's not real, whatever. I don't know. I don't live in the real world. I would be I look at this box and I immediately start thinking about all of the theories where I've been thinking about how introverted sensing compartmentalizes things and puts things in boxes. And so I don't see this box. I'm thinking about the boxes in the theory that I am working on, mm-hmm. which is ridiculous. That makes no sense. But that's how introverted intuition works. So again, I don't get magical feelings about this box. Neither does she. That's not real.
Intuition is not magic.
Neither one of us are magic. No. So just to summarize, nobody is a complete sensor and nobody is a complete intuitive. So it's very likely that if you were an intuitive, you could look at a box and you could just give us the details of that box mm-hmm. for whatever reason it could be. Again, that was just an example to show you how intuition and sensing work on a basis. Now, again, remember, this is your second letter of your code. So it gets a little funny. In our last video, we will tell you how you figure out what's in your stack. Mm-hmm. But just because you are an introvert does not mean all of your functions are introverted. Mm-hmm. And just because you're an extrovert does not mean all of your functions are extroverted. You have a mix of both. So you also have a mix of intuition and sensing in your cognitive functions.
That literally means every single person out there has intuition and every single person out there also uses sensing. There's not one human being that doesn't use both.
Exactly. So, again, why does this matter? Because it gives us a language to discuss what's happening inside of our brains. Mm-hmm. And the more words that we have to describe our thought processes, to describe our complex emotions, the better off we are, the healthier we are. Because being human is hard, and this makes it easier.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Just everything we can do to help, right?
Everything.
So that is S versus N. So if you are an intuitive and you are offended greatly because we told you you weren't magic, I'm very sorry. I didn't want to offend you. I didn't want to.
You also kind of need to hear it, so I'm not sorry.
I'm sorry. If you feel like you are magic, far be it from me to tell you you are not magic. You can be as magic as you want to be. It's true. If you feel like you can tell the future, I believe you can tell the future.
No, I'm right there with you. If you believe whatever you want to believe about yourself, honestly, because that's truly the only thing that matters at the end of the day. But really where this is coming from is the fact that we just see it. Again, we kind of live in the internet when it comes to this stuff, and the internet is all about feeling like sensors are almost less than.
Right, and that is not it.
It's not true at all whatsoever. They give the most unique gifts to the world that are of the utmost necessity for us to just survive. Like, they're so necessary. And again, on the internet, it's very well known that intuitives get this stereotype about them that they're magical, or that they can read your mind, or that they
are extra creative.
It's all BS. It really is. Anyone can be anything. Truly. We 100% believe that.
Right. And so what we look at is we look at the trends and the behaviors that tend to manifest, but just because you don't have those behaviors doesn't mean that you're not a sensor or you're not an intuitive. We can do our very best. Right?
Exactly. All right.
So that is it. So tune in for the next video, which is going to be
thinking versus feeling.
Right. Which is quite easier than
so much easier than this one. So much easier than this one. But we will
see you on the next. I can't see it.
I'm including that one. That's the one we're using. That one right there.